are, and food is so easy, you know, it is so easy to sell and to steal and to feed armies with, etc., etc. So food is a very dodgy aid, but that is most aid on this kind. There is, what I noticed in practice is that sometimes it is easier to bring medical aids because that is quite, it's quite monogamous, if you know what I mean. It is a doctor and he has band-aids, and that's about it. There will not be a lot of goods there. There will not be a lot of cash money there. It is quite. Sometimes there is respect for medical aid. So medical aid sometimes is left alone. But what you see, to my great regret, is that more and more often also doctors are being killed and kidnapped and harassed.
Michelle, once again, sorry, I need to leave earlier than I thought. I just want to say something. First, thank you personally. You are able to come here. It's a very important thing. I want to thank also, right? This year we have one of the participants in the program, Avital Khazoni, which her mother is the editor of all of this.
Oh, yay!
You know, Yael. Okay, she was here last year, I think, yes, in this lecture, so thanks to Yael Khazoni.
And my sister-in-law also here. We read a lot of that.
And one more thing, just my comment, maybe I'll say it in Hebrew, afterwards I'll translate it to English in our email. It will be more fluent. יש פה בספר הזה, בהקשר לשאלה שלהם, אני חושב שזה ספר חשוב, ספר מחקר חשוב, מהספרים החשובים שאני יצא לי לקרוא, לא שאני כזה רידר, אבל בכל אופן זה ספר חשוב מאוד, מבחינת המחקר שלו, משתי סיבות. התחלתי את היום בראוי ובמצוי, אז אני מוצא נכון לסגור אותו ככה. יש פה היבט אחד של המצוי, כלומר של מה שקורה בארגוני הזכויות, בארגוני הסיוע ההומניטרי בעולם. Like you said, to know the reality, to know what's going on, it is one level. The other level here is the industry. זה כולל גם אפילו באסונות טבע, נהיה תעשייה כזאת, זה כבר מממן את עצמו, ויש פה שני פרקים מאוד מאוד חשובים על המונגו ועל ה-industry aspects of the humanitarian aid organizations. זה דבר שני. והדבר השלישי, שזה בעיקר ההערה שרציתי לצרף כאן לדיון, זה שמשליך, עולה פה שאלה, למה האירופאי הלבן, the white man, as you expressed it before, למרות שהוא יודע כבר, באים אליו ארגוני הזכויות, וחוץ מהארגון שהזכירה שעושה חשבון נפש גדול, לפעמים הוא יודע ש80% הולך לטרוריסטים שמנציחים את הפליטים ואת המצב, ובכל זאת, somehow, ההצגה חייבת להימשך, והעסק הזה ממשיך, וזה מעלה שאלה על הראוי, לא על המצוי. זה מעלה שאלה על הנורמות של הצדק, על שורשי הערכים, ספציפית באירופה בעיקר, הזכרתי את המדינות התורמות, זה בעצם שלוש רמות בעיניי, הספר הזה מצוין, יש פה בסוף, in the end of your book, if someone didn't notice, so there is a nice, very nice, cute and important, cute it's not the right word for the description of such a book, but there is the humanitarian discourse, יש שיח סיוע, it's like, it's לפי א' ב', terms and values that Linda wrote once, אחד אחרי השני בצורה יפה, ממליץ מאוד. We have here, you know, that this program, the Identity and Public Policy program, has 30 books, 3 or books, 30 books, this is the books of this program. Yes, now in the readers you have from time to time chapter from one of the books. The books are here. As you can see, your book is in the iShow. So this is one of the books of this program. That's why Dr. Lisson put one of your chapters here in the readers of this program. It's very important.
2 of them.
Very important, unique one. Thanks to you. That was only thanks to you. I'm sorry that I need to go.
Sure.
We'll have some other time, Yael. I'm very sorry. No, I couldn't find. What?
אתה נוסע לירושלים.
מעלה אדומים, if you ask. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I would like to know if you think that there is some way that the United Nations or the European Union can regulate the whole activity of humanitarian organizations.
Well, I mean, in a way, this is why the United Nations were invented, you know. The United Nations at the same time is a totally powerless organization. The United Nations will only do what member states will tell it to do. So if the member states tell the United Nations, go and save the world, then the UN will actually go and save the world. But it is the member states that make it a powerless organization. So I published a lot about the United Nations some time ago, and I spent quite a lot of time inside the United Nations headquarters in New York, this huge flat building there. And I did a sort of travel story about that building, you know. I sort of decided to travel through there for days and just see what was happening there, you know, like a sort of anthropological research. So in the elevators and on the escalators and in the canteens, and I would knock on offices, etc. And there was one day when I knocked on a door, and there was a memorial service going on for a UN economist that had died. He was from Bangladesh. I had never heard of the man, but he was being commemorated inside this room. His colleagues were there to praise his life, and I sat there, and then I realized that on an ordinary Monday morning, present at that meeting were 5 Nobel Prize winners, you know, and those were people that had given their brains and their career and their time to serve the United Nations, so in a way to serve the people of the world, you know. And then I realized that there's so much potential there, and the member states will not use it. They are afraid of the UN becoming too powerful. I realized how important it is for member states to keep the UN as powerless as possible. I come from a country where you can smoke weed. You know, we have these coffee shops. And it's one of the few places on earth where you can just walk in and say, I'll have that, you know. And then they have a menu you can choose from, and you pay, and you go out. And then the big thing for tourists to do is have a joint and ask a policeman for a fire, you know. So this is a freedom that we want in Holland. We think it is okay. But just imagine, you know, one day the member states, United States, as a member state of the United Nations, America will say, this must end, you know, this is a narco state and this is dangerous for the peace of the world. And we demand a peacekeeping operation to go to Holland to close the coffee shops, you know. So this is the reason why UN member states won't allow the UN to have that power. We don't want them in our own country. We don't want the UN to tell us what we should do and what we should not do. So this is why we keep the UN in a total limbo. And it makes me very sad because, again, you know, they have Nobel Prize winners working for them. So if you ask me, should the regulation come from the UN? Yes, but it won't. Because the UN member states will not allow the UN to regularize anything at all.
In the European Union?
No, please, not European Union very recently was diagnosed as one of the most corrupt institutions on this planet. So no. Yeah, keep away from the European Union. Can I elaborate?
Yeah.
Well, they're corrupt. I mean, there's just so much money disappearing and so many deals being made under the table. And I mean, if you look at the amount of money noted down as having disappeared, it's larger than what disappears in Africa. And we always pointed at Africa to be the corruptest place on the entire earth. It's not. It's Europe. It's sickening. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You talk about political powers that influence the aid, and as an Israeli citizen, I wanted to ask you about the Palestinian refugees. There is a common claim that some powers want to leave the situation of the refugees as it is now for their political reason, and to to leave them as refugees for their purposes. And I wanted to ask if you see, how do you see that situation, and if you think that the aid organization have any influence of that political situation there?
Well, the aid organizations in the question of the Palestinians, the aid organizations are there because there's a lot of money going there. So I mean, it's work for them. It's the international
aid
community.
Organization has some political agenda.
Who, the aid organization?
Yeah.
Of course. It's an entirely political thing. It has nothing or very, very little to do with humanitarianism. No, I mean, of course, you know this much better than I do. It's a political situation there. There's a political reason why the Palestinians are there. It's a political reason why the problem is not being solved. It's a political reason why so much money is going there. There are so many political interests going on there. It's an amazing situation. Thank God it is quite a unique situation. We don't get this everywhere. In normal circumstances, what happens is you get these refugee problems, and you allow them to exist for a couple of years, and then it has to be solved. You know, either those people go home, or they get on with their lives. There are so many larger refugee populations than the Palestinians. Those problems have been solved. Like look at what happened in 1948 between Pakistan and India. Millions of people were displaced, you know, they were thrown out of Pakistan or they were thrown out of India and driven to the other side of the border. It happened, it was a horrible situation, people lost everything and they got on with their lives. The world did not allow those refugee populations to exist. The countries themselves did not allow those people to exist as refugees. They were just told to get on with their life, take your loss and that's it, you know. Look at if I'm not mistaken, around the same time that the Palestinian problem came into existence, I think there were 950,000 Jews driven out of the Arab world. They lost everything. They got on with their lives, you know. There is the Second World War in Europe. It created enormous refugee populations. They're not there anymore. They were taken into the daily life. We have a refugee thing in Holland. Holland used to have a colony in Indonesia, and there was this group of people, Indonesian people, the Moluccans, and they fought with the Dutch army to try and keep the colony, but of course Holland lost. So these Moluccans lost as well, you know, so they ran from Indonesia to prevent revenge, and they came to Holland, and they sat there just like the Palestinians, you know, in a camp in Holland. And they demanded that they could return to Indonesia. It didn't happen, you know. The refugee status only lasted for a few years, and after that it was done, you know. They had to be assimilated into the Dutch life. They got the Dutch nationality, they got a Dutch passport, and that was the end of the problem. Their hearts are broken, but the problem did not, it was not allowed to fester on. So what is happening now with the Palestinians is absolutely amazing. You know, how long has it been now? 67 years or something? I mean, you have third generation, they inherit the title of being a refugee. That happens nowhere else in the world. So it is a very strange situation, and the situation is there because of political reasons. And this, what the UN is doing there, this UN organization, how do you call it? UNRWA? How do you call it? UNRWA. I mean, they are a totally political organization. Their interest is to keep the problem going, because it's the reason for their own existence. And of course the international community, all the donors, including the European Union, they just pour billions of dollars into that target group. I don't know how long it will last, because I think when it started the problem was 600,000 people, and now it's 6 million people. 5 million people. So in another few years you'll have 7, and in another 20 years you'll have 12 million people. This cannot go on. Yeah, so I don't know where the solution is coming from, but it will explode. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure.
You know, we say all the donor countries give this money as in the war against terror, but terror is very, very abstract. And the terrorists are mainly, 99% of all the conflicts in the world today are based on Islam. And somehow we have to change those terms of reference, not war on terror, but war against Islamic terror.
Well, for now it works.
But I think that is the heart of the problem, that we do not admit that we're in the midst of a war.
Yes, it is. Yes, yeah. I think we will have. I mean, the war. I think the war on terror will ebb away a little bit now. We will now have the Cold War again. It's the Russians again. I mean, I noticed this. It's also because the politicians and also the media they sort of enjoy the Russians coming back. It's a simple problem. Yeah. It's nice and simple. Yeah, it's the Russians that are the bad guys. And we know that problem because we've been in that problem for a long time. And it's much better than the Taliban and stuff. Yeah, so I think the emphasis may shift again towards Russian-influenced countries and Western-influenced countries. Maybe, I don't know. But I agree. But I mean, terrorism, at the base of our problem with terrorism is oil. Terrorists are often in places where oil is involved too, or oil pipelines,
That's also Islam.
Yeah. But we need an enemy. We do. This is what keeps us going. Yes, please.
You said that you think that that the humanitarian aid should be regulated. Only you also were very adamant that because countries give humanitarian aid for political reasons, then that's bad and the wrong people get humanitarian aid. But if it's regulated, doesn't that mean automatically that it will be more political and more military and less just the people who need it?
Well, this is the case, yes, but we call it humanitarian aid. We tell each other that we are doing this to develop a world, to develop poor people, to make life better for people. But in the meantime, we are only bringing money to people that we have an interest in, a political or military interest in. So I think it is a totally hypocritical industry. What I think is, just be honest about it, say that you're helping people because you need them to fight your war, or say that you help them because you need their products or something. Then it becomes an entirely different relationship and a different matter and a different way of communicating with each other.
Does that mean that humanitarian aid is impossible?
Well, if you go back to how do you do now, obviously it is possible, yeah. But that is humanitarian aid without any interest involved at all. That is what the Red Cross does. The Red Cross is the only organization, as far as I know, that has this independence, because the Red Cross is not dependent on what we give if we see a disaster on television. The Red Cross has members. The states are members of the Red Cross. Other organizations, we don't often realize this, but almost all United Nations organizations, like UNICEF and the World Health Organization, not UNRWA, but all the others, they depend on what we give them every year. They depend, so they may ask for $500 million to solve children's illnesses, for example, but it's up to us whether we give them that money or not. So they are very dependent on what we have on our political agendas. The International Red Cross does not have to collect that money. They have the money because they have member states. So the International Red Cross is the only aid organization that goes where they themselves decide to go. It is the only aid organization that will give this independent aid, that will not ask the questions. They see somebody bleeding and they will put a plaster on it. So this is humanitarianism in its purest form. And it works. It works, yeah.
You should open an organization that they should register by you.
Sorry?
I was thinking that you should open a new organization promoting people to register as to go through a process and I don't know, maybe sponsor it and get people to go through it.
No way! I would be terrible. I would be so prejudiced. I am not an adept of Humanitarian at all. I think
No, not Red Cross. I'm saying that if an organization would open that gets people to
No,
like.
but why are we trying to find new things all the time? The International Red Cross is there. You know, if you can live with the principle of the International Red Cross, then go for that. You know, it's also it's part of the reason why the NGO industry can exist is because we panic all the time. You know, we see a disaster on TV. We think, oh, we must give them money because it is so terrible and these children are dying, etc., etc. So we jump from one organization to the other. We jump from one disaster to the other. We are feeding this panicky, whimsical aid industry. Why don't, if you believe that aid should be there, if you believe in bringing aid, if you believe in humanitarianism, why don't you choose one organization? I don't care which one, I really don't. Choose one organization, stick with them. You know, follow them on the internet, find out what they're up to, find out if they're still doing a good job in 5 years, you know. But in the meantime, stay with them. So at least you have some sort of control or knowledge or understanding about what this one aid organization is doing. But don't invent more organizations because the old ones are not doing a good job. Because we only get more and more and more and more and more organizations. All those Mongos that I mentioned in the book, my own NGOs, they're all born and dozens of new Mongos come into existence every day. It's all people who listen to me, you know, or they see on TV how the aid industry is doing things wrong, and then they say, oh, we can do better, you know, and then they start their own organization. You only add to the problem. There's more organizations that we cannot control. There's more organizations competing with the other organizations. So find out what the situation is. Find yourself a nice aid organization who's already there, and support them for many years to come. But don't. So take care of what is good. Do your research. You know, you have a responsibility. That's really what I believe. You are citizens of a democracy. It is your responsibility to check what our leaders are doing, especially if you sponsor those leaders. If you want to sponsor an aid organization, then do your research. Find out who they are. Find out what they're doing. Find out why they're going to a certain place and not to another place. Take your responsibility. Do your research. And be good citizens of a democracy, you know. It comes with responsibilities.
Thank you very much.